Well, I hope that the time that we've been spending in the Psalms this Lent has been helpful for you and even, dare I say, educational at some points. So remember that we've been talking about some of the characteristics of the Psalms. They are prayers. They give voice to a wide range of feelings and emotions that we can express to God. And then many of them also turn back to us and allow us to hear the voice of God respond, giving us a sense of dialogue between us and God in these prayers. I've said the Psalms are poetic. They're short and concise, with every word being placed there by the writer for a specific purpose. And then they are also songs. They are meant to be performed. They have a metrical and musical quality to how the words flow. We can speak them together, we can chant them together, we can sing them together. The Psalms are for us. So this evening, adding to the list of our knowledge about the Psalms, I wanted to point us to the metaphors and the images that are contained within this book of the Bible. Because of its poetic nature, the Psalms contain more metaphor and imagery than any other book of the Bible. I mean, Jesus, of course, uses metaphors, or as he likes to call them, parables, to help us understand things that we just don't seem to understand. But I just wonder if he learned to use metaphor or learned about the power of using metaphor from his study and knowledge of the Psalms. We, of course, get really powerful images elsewhere throughout the Bible, especially in places like the book of Revelations. But the images that are contained in the Psalms allow us, as the readers and speakers and hearers, to be placed right in those images. And for example, this past Sunday we heard the gospel story of the woman at the well and her life-changing encounter with Jesus. And while many of us could probably picture the well and maybe picture ourselves standing with this woman and with Jesus at the well, and maybe some of us very well did that, John's point of that particular story was not necessarily for us to place ourselves at that well. It wasn't an image that invited us to be part of the image, which is different than the Psalms. The images and metaphors of the Psalms invite us into those places and invite those places into our lives. So tonight's psalm, the psalm that's assigned for this coming weekend's worship services, is a fairly familiar psalm. It's a psalm I imagine we've all heard, if not even memorized. It's Psalm 23. And so because of its richness of image and metaphor, I want you to really hear it and put yourselves in it. But because it is so familiar, that may be hard to do. So I was going to read it, and without anything in front of you or on the screen, I've already seen some of you open your books. If you want to, you can. But I want to invite you into it. I want to read it putting a long pause, or a prayerful pause, if you will, between every half verse, giving you a little bit of time to let the words sink in. So as we settle into that mood, I would invite you to find that comfortable position in your chair, if that's possible in these chairs, and even close your eyes if you want to. But in all of that, I invite you to hear the words of Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not be in want. The Lord makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. You restore my soul, O Lord. You guide me along right pathways for your name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup is running over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. And I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Sometimes it's best just to let the Psalms say what they want to say. But in this psalm that's just so rich with metaphor and images, here's my question, or one of my questions. Which of those images stands out to you, and why? And you can open your books now if you'd like.
That he's with us all the time.
Yep. Other images. Still waters, quietness, protection.
Eternal death. walking through the shadow of death, that is eternal death. And that's the only shadow of death. It cannot reach you any longer.
Anointing your head with oil, because that's the first thing in there where it's really contact, I guess. It's something that you would do for someone that's special.
It's nice. I know this is an important psalm for a lot of you. Maybe not, but if it is, why? Why is this psalm meaningful?
The last verse, the promise of everlasting life.
The promise of everlasting life on the last verse.
You know, it talks about death and lets you look forward to it.
Nope. Just to take the time and to stop and think about all of these images is fantastic, I think. You know, for me, this was something I needed to hear today. You talk about like listening to your own preaching kind of thing. You know, from the moment I stepped foot into the office this morning, things just went nonstop, right? Phone calls, people, projects, to-do lists. I mean, it was crazy. And it wasn't nothing against anyone or anything that happened this morning. It was just enough to cause your head to spin. I'm sure all of you have had those days. So finally I got the break and I went to lunch. I went downtown. I found a quiet restaurant. I found a quiet chair in the quiet corner of the quiet restaurant. I placed my order and I got out my notebook and my paper that had the psalm on it, and I started to read. I read the psalm. And I know I said, you know, it's best read out loud, but I didn't know how the others around me would think of that. Maybe they needed to hear it too, but I wasn't there at that point. But I read the psalm to myself. And I just stopped and I did what I just did a little bit ago. I just read pieces of the verse and I thought. I thought of myself as a sheep being watched by the great shepherd, knowing that I wasn't alone, knowing that I was loved and cared for, And I wasn't alone because sheep travel in flocks. You know, sometimes you're the sheep that's out on the edge and vulnerable to everything that comes your way, but sometimes you're the sheep in the middle, surrounded by all the others and protected. And I thought of myself living in that green pasture with the calm, blue, still water, which was a very welcome feeling, looking around at the brown and the gray and the frozen water that we have right now. And before I even got past that part of the psalm, my whole being just slowed down. And I knew I wasn't alone. Not just everyone else in the restaurant staring at me, but God was with me right there. It was a comfort. It was a comfort in this image of life with God. Comfort in the protection and fullness God provides in our deep and dark valleys. Comfort in the promise that this psalm gives, that we are with God and that God is with us. We've all been there. And so I thought we would conclude by reading together the psalm in the beautifully poetic and well-known King James Version, reciting together that powerful promise that comes from our shepherd and Lord. It's on the screen, but it might be the one you have memorized. So let us read together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Thanks be to God.